catalyst. You could call it a catalyst. You could call it a globe's bullshit and we see through it. Right, there's more to it than that. You missed the birth. You have to watch the birth to know how it came about. Because we were talking for weeks. That bay has a beak, and that's not just any beak. That beak is Occam's razor. Nothing gets into this guy. Nothing or her, whatever it is. This emperor penguin doesn't consume anything without first cutting away all unnecessary assumptions, all unnecessary leaps of logic. The emperor penguin is chosen because he surrounds us. He is in Antarctica. Just as you might say, the peacock has been used as something as a guard for the harems. You might say that since we are kind of like chattel, we are the harem of the elite, that the penguin might be said to be their guard, the emperor penguin. Morkulov says he's a sexy bitch. So, we found this thing to be a good cultural rallying point for delivering a very pointed message, which is the globe's bullshit and we see through it. Globe's bullshit and we see through it. Globe's bullshit and we see through it. Globe's bullshit and we see through it.
All right, thanks for joining. Today is November the 20th, 2020. One of the best years ever for a lot of reasons. Let's see, phones are open, 833-311-1984. I don't believe I have any voicemails waiting. Let me just go ahead and check. Again, it's 24/7. You can leave messages. I will replay them, or I'll play them live, if you want us to play them live. Some people specify otherwise. And I do have a couple of messages, I believe. Anyway, we have a few things to catch up on. Cannibalism. Cannibalism is a thing. Also, I want to say one thing. I don't believe that we're being censored when they shut down YouTube channels. It's basically we're not adhering to their communist rules. I don't call that censorship. What I would call that is, well, breaking the rules. But we don't like the rules, so it's sort of a protest. So at no point would I consider people who are being pushed off of these big channels actually facing real censorship. I think it's very easy to claim that, but it's a pretty tall claim. And I kind of don't agree with the idea of running to other platforms and hiding, because that's sort of the same thing as being conquered. Anyway, we're not going anywhere. I did add a couple more YouTube channels, so we're still on YouTube and everywhere else. And I think they actually killed Nightbot when they took out that channel. So if you hated that bot, I couldn't figure out how to restrain it, so I think they did us a favor. Anyway, I have a spoiler alert. Soylent Green is people. Let me play this clip.
I promise. I'll tell it soon. You tell everybody. Listen to me, Hatcher. You gotta tell them Soylent Green is people! We gotta stop them somehow!
Alright, yes, Soylent Green is people. And that's not just a spoiler for the movie, it's a spoiler for possibly 2020. So there's a company actually doing this. They're called Ouroboros. And they say that science approves cannibalism. So it's just another new normal development. The Ouroboros steak, named after the ancient Egyptian snake that eats itself, can be grown from cells scraped from the inside of your cheek. Or it can be fed serum from old donated blood. So if you don't know what to do with that bag of blood you haven't found a recipient for, well, you can eat it. While the steak is currently just a prototype and designed as a thought-provoking work of art, it is a real piece of meat grown from human cells. When I first saw this, I thought it was like something being sold out of the back of a Planned Parenthood. It looked like fetuses, but no, this is human steak grown from, of course, a cheek swab. And it's a really interesting development because about a month ago, I was talking about 3D printed steaks in space, which are a thing. And how it works is they take a bovine cell, they put it in a 3D printer, and they print out beef jerky. And so I was talking to an anti-speciesist, a vegan, someone who's kind of extreme in his views, but he's really big on the shame shaming people who eat animals and stuff. So I asked them, I said, well, when we go to Mars, they're not taking cows, but they may take 3D printers. Are you okay with them taking bovine cells and printing out a steak? Even though they're not technically killing one or farming it, they don't exactly have its permission to put its cells into a 3D meat printer. And that's the whole idea, consent. So he agreed with me that it would not be appropriate to have 3D printed cow steaks on Mars. However, if there are humans willing to swab their own cheeks, he was fine with human steak on Mars. So it just took me a while to get there. But I have a feeling that most vegans, not most, I shouldn't say that, but many of them would probably agree with the premise that cannibalism can be justified before eating cows in such a situation. Commenter says, IPS has been busy nonstop. Oh yes, for the last few days actually, we've been working on a pilot for what should be a weekly cartoon. I'm not going to really divulge any spoilers, but if you're familiar with our memes and with the types of content we produce, the types of bannable content that just got my 86th YouTube channel 86th, then you might know what to expect. If you're a troll flake or a church lady, have your box of Kleenex at your side. And we're going to stream it live here as a premiere on Thanksgiving. So this Thanksgiving, it'll be on this channel. Again, we'll give you all the information at that time. Anyway, I want to go on to talk about these human morsels, lab-grown meat. It says they've usually relied upon fetal bovine serum, or FBS, a protein-rich growth liquid for cell cultures. This time they're talking about, well, taking it from humans. Science says it's not cannibalism, so the masses will be cool with it. And if science says, people will go with it. So I don't think there's anything to stop it. Like McDonald's could go that route, and people would probably go with it. Okay, this is where the news is at. I just cropped this story. This is from New York Post. Justin Herbert looks completely different after a haircut. That's the headline. Hair today, gone tomorrow. Says Chargers star rookie has ditched his brown locks for a cleaner, shorter look. Quote, no particular reason, the 22-year-old told reporters. That's a news story. And we're supposed to believe that the pandemic is real. Another development, you probably heard about this, Governor American Psycho, who said no Thanksgiving for the little people, was busted at a fancy restaurant that probably costed more than your stimulus check. You know, this is an expensive restaurant, hanging out with a lot of people, no social distancing, no masks. Now, these people probably do eat 3D printed human meat, if not human meat actually harvested. Well, I don't know this, but if anybody, he did come out and he apologized for attending. It was a French laundry dinner with Newsom. And they went ahead with it despite coronavirus restrictions. And you know who else is breaking the rules here? Matrix breaker Keanu Reeves was supposedly shooting a scene for a movie, but it turned out to be a cover for a party, which I thought was brilliant. Think about it. You're filming a movie, and they use that as a way to, well, have fun. Kind of reminds me of Prohibition era instances like the Benevolent Protective Order of the Elks. You know, the elk lodges. I knew someone from an elk lodge once, and he said that when they started, it was an easy way to skirt the blue laws. So if you wanted to gamble or drink or have fun after certain hours, like after 6 p.m. on Sundays, well, you could go to lodge. And they got around the rules by cleverly building drinking into the lodge rituals, which was a ritual salute. Anyway, it's kind of similar. And I kind of foresaw this when this whole COVID thing started. I'm like, are we going to see speakeasies again? And we kind of are. Okay, next, science is magic. This is an Illuminati playing card. Sufficiently developed technology. It says any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke is an important science fiction figure to think about or to research if you're looking at this metascript concept. I mean, it's just kind of peculiar how all of the well-known science fiction writers are also prophets. Like, as far as prophets go, they have better scores than biblical prophets if you look at these sci-fi writers. And there's a reason why. There's a reason why you can watch Netflix and know what's going to go on the news next. Commenter says, my dad was an elk, haha, whatever they call it. Oh, sure. Just like on the Flintstones, the Moose Club. I think that's about all it is. From what I understand, I think they have the similar initiations, but it's less sinister, probably more about getting around the rules. But we're at the point where, Thanksgiving dinner, you can have 6 people over, or you can hold a funeral for the turkey and then have your whole family over. I think they extend it to 20 for funerals. These rules are entirely arbitrary. That's why you can walk into a restaurant with a mask and you're fine, as long as you have your mask on. But it's okay to take it off if you're seated so you can eat. It's like, wait, the COVID isn't going to go over your head, is it? Like, should we be doing duck and cover drills for COVID? If somebody coughs, do we duck and cover? Because it doesn't make sense that if you're seated at a table, you can take your mask off. Anyway, people are becoming the pod people, and it's very disturbing to watch it emerge. I did see something that is highly suggestive of where things are going, and it has to do with space. So a space rock fell on someone, and apparently, I think a 33-year-old. And this hadn't happened since like 1956. Do you remember I talked about this last week? Last week I was making fun of space rock, saying that we haven't had one since like 1954 in Alabama, and I showed you the fake photos of the hole in the roof and the obvious like lipstick smeared on her hip, and they said, yeah, a meteor hit her. It was the fakest story ever. Let me go ahead and start with that. Let's go ahead and go to that. Okay, so because I think that they needed to update this story. Because do you know what a rarity this is? How just like unlikely of a thing it is? So a meteor hits an Alabama woman, and this was in 1954 on November the 30th. So she's in Oak Grove, and they call it the Hodges meteorite because a fragment of it went through her roof, bounced off a radio, and hit her on the hip. And this was a 4.5 billion year old meteorite. So you can find pictures of the Hodges meteor, and you can see the extraterrestrial bruiser, and it looks like they literally just smeared lipstick on her. That is not what it would look like if a space rock hit you on the hip. That is so fake, so phony. But it sufficed in 1954. And I was making fun of modern day space rock believers because they have to believe this stuff. Like, if you believe in the moon landing, you have to believe in this kooky stuff, and we don't have to. Well, I've been saying on Twitter for the last few days that if you think this is even remotely possible, why aren't you wearing a helmet? The same experts that say, put on your mask, are the ones saying that asteroids are more dangerous than anything. In fact, Jim Bridenstine, chief of NASA, said that the number one threat to the survival of the human race is no longer climate change. It's space rocks. It's not even COVID. So climate change, yeah, you're mitigating that. You're recycling your Coke cans and you're paying your carbon taxes. When it comes to COVID, you're wearing your masks. But if the biggest threat of all is a falling space rock, why aren't you wearing a helmet? So I'm starting to think here that it's not enough for a clear face shield or a mask. I'm starting to think that hard helmets, like just put on an exoskeleton. All the hive-minded former humans turning into insectoids. So anyway, this hasn't happened since 1954. I was making fun of them. And look what just happened 2 days ago. And I'm like pretty sure this is a joke. So rare meteorite worth $2 million crashes through a man's roof. Now this happened a couple days ago, right after we talked about this. An Indonesian man became astronomically rich after a meteorite worth $2 million smashed through the roof of his home. When I lifted it, the stone was still warm. Joshua Hutagulung told the news outlet the 33-year-old coffin maker was working next to his home when the pricey space rock shard crashed through his home's overhang. So a 33-year-old gets a $2 million precious gem from outer space, and you know what he's doing with it? He's starting a church. He said that his church was, something happened with his church, COVID shut it down, and so he's taking this as a sign from God. So it ties in the COVID thing, the space thing, the 33. I mean, to me, it's just another fake story. It was still warm. I mean, how come it didn't leave a crater? Nothing. But anyway, as I said, they must be listening to us because I believe that's the first time that we had a rock come down from space since 1954. And are they going to quarantine him? Because yes, it might have had space AIDS. COVIDs actually might be space AIDS. I've done a little bit of research on this. I remember when it was first brought up. So we had C19, COVID-19. Some had originally correlated it with the C19 comet, thinking that pieces of the comet raining down on the Earth. And I remember there was some video Marfugel put up that showed the comet getting hit with something, and it was insinuated it had broken up. That maybe that's what sprinkled COVID all over the globe. We got the spades. I mean, the whole world is assumed to be infected, and I still don't buy the narrative that it was some underheated bowl of bat soup and a counterfeit $20 bill that brought the world down. I don't buy it. These are just cover stories. But for the record, this channel is pro-vax. I see so many people being censored on Twitter for taking the wrong position on such an important matter. You don't think we ought to vax the billionaire philanthropists? You don't think we ought to vax the rabid left? I mean, really. Let's go ahead and give them double dosages if we have to. And I do think it would be appropriate to deny the vaxes to anyone who's ever spread misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theories, or anyone who's ever forwarded a meme critical of the WHO. That's a lot of people not going to be admitted into the new age. Now, I did see something, and I'm not alarmed by it, but I did see some army type, some general talking about, we're going to vax everybody in 24 hours. It's like, do you realize how impossible that is? In 24 hours, the military is going to vax everybody. Now, if vax is code for something else, yeah, you could do some things in 24 hours, but distributing something, no way. Here's an article that came out in July. This is by Patrick Fagan of The Critic. Face masks make you stupid and are a form of dehumanization. So this is back in July. He says, face masks make you suggestible. They make you more likely to follow someone else's direction and do things you wouldn't otherwise do. Anyway, this article describes the ways that totalitarian regimes make people docile, to make them easier to control. The dumbing down, as you know, the fallacious worldview, the logical fallacies, the gaslighting. I mean, we live in 1984. I mean, in fact, I had a meme I spread today that was a direct quote from 1984 about not allowed to have fun. You're not allowed to have gatherings. You can't have parties. It was, well, prophetic, prescient. Okay, so what this article is about is, of course, the effects of wearing a mask on the person who's wearing it. And this is not something I thought about very much. I mean, I have thought about several implications, but the implications of keeping the mouth closed and then also suggestibility. It made me think about basic training, how soldiers don't talk unless the sergeant calls on them, mouths stay closed. It's to me, I always thought this was like BDSM. In fact, I think I called it bondage, that this is some type of like 50 Shades of Gray, 50 Shades of Big Brother, stage one, cover our mouths and we have to obey. I mean, this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of their whole plan. I just don't see it going very far. But listen to this. There's a few things about it. You've already seen this. So he's talking about this article is talking about various studies on what happens when people are wearing a mask and how it changes their behaviors. So it says here in a 1979 study, children were presented with a bowl of chocolates and they were allowed to only take 2 each. When they thought they weren't being watched or when they were wearing masks, they were far more likely to engage in, quote, lower restraint behavior. So it's talking about the disinhibition effect, how people will act even more antisocial as they do online. You know for a fact, if you've ever dealt with internet trolls, you know that not a single internet troll would ever say to your face what they say online. We've already established this. We have a song by One Eye Jack called Troll Flakes, because what you find is that behind every troll is a snowflake. And they get away with it because, of course, they're wearing a mask. So let me move on here. Now here's the interesting part. From a neuroimaging perspective, masks are known to inhibit identity and impulse control, both associated with executive function in the prefrontal cortex. In other words, masks silence the Jiminy Cricket in the brain. It says here, it's little wonder that covering our mouths would shut us up psychologically. Studies have shown that clothing has a powerful effect on how we think via a principle known as enclothed cognition. So what it's describing here is that it's a body language thing. So it says similarly, in the world of body language, someone putting their hand over their mouth is a sign that they're listening intently. They're ready to receive information and not question it. It's fairly safe to assume, says the writer here, that shutting up would have a cognitive effect. So in other words, people might actually be less inclined to talk. And then he goes into other things about it, having to do with face veils reducing ventilation, surgical masks reducing blood oxygenation, various things along those lines which are highly disputed. You're not even allowed to talk about it without risking your channel. I mean, I'm starting to think that they just want to turn us into insects, make us indistinguishable, ant people, hive people. Nunya Business says, I haven't met anyone who died of it. My sister was scanning people who entered the hospital. Yet there aren't any. I'm getting a lot of tips from filmyourhospital.com, which I'm going to reboot that site next week because I'm getting a lot of information, leads, links, and a lot of the videos have just been taken down. Clara says, do you want to become famous? Buy followers, primes, and viewers. Go to bigfollows.com. Now, another thing here, same commenter says about her sister who works at the hospital, the worst thing was when the kids were getting tested, they were all screaming in agony. Yeah, you're talking about a Q-tip at the blood-brain barrier. I mean, I think it's horrific, this whole concept. I mean, what do you say? I mean, people are brainwashed as they've always been brainwashed. It could be a lot worse. We can go with that. And one way it could be worse, there could actually be a plague. There could actually be a body. I mean, how many bodies have you tripped over on your way to the grocery store? How many? 0. How many protesters died of COVID-19? You realize not one single BLM peaceful protester caught the Kung flu? Not one. How does that happen? Now, my best theory right now is tear gas cures corona, which would explain the discrepancies why left-wing rioters don't catch it, but peaceful right-wing, marchers do catch it. Uncool Ben says, is vegan an insult around here? No, I wouldn't think so. In fact, we have a vegan caller who was specifically agreeing with me, because on principle, and this is something I'd be interested to hear, if you're going to say that you shouldn't be eating anything, it's basically speciesism, then is it even right to 3D print an artificial steak based on bovine cells? And I was saying no. I was saying if on principle you're rejecting this, then you could only take it from someone who consents, which would be a human. And he agreed with me that yes, cannibal, which again, it's kind of a strange argument, but I think it's worth bringing it up, especially because now we have scientists who are making the case for, well, cannibalism, even though it's sort of not. I mean, it's called Ouroboros. So let me bring this article back up. It says you can now eat human steak, and scientists insist it's not cannibalism. While the steak is just a prototype, and let me move on here. Okay, it says here, fetal bovine serum costs significant amount of money and the lives of animals. So even there, you're still dealing with the same issues. Although some lab-grown meat companies are claiming to have solved this problem, to our knowledge, no independent peer-reviewed scientific studies have validated these claims. As the lab-grown meat industry is developing rapidly, it's important to develop designs that expose the underlying constraints. The human-like mouthfuls of the Ouroboros project are created without the use of FBS, without causing harm to animals. And that's my point. So I think you could make, if you're of the opinion that speciesism is a thing and that is the future, then I don't think 3D printed steak from anything other than vegetable proteins or willing humans would be tenable. I think it would be kind of against the principle. None of your business says, I can see the second wave coming now. The first was a test run. That's what they said before. That's what they said before. They said, well, the empty tents are there to catch the second wave. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean second wave? Where is the first wave? I'm still waiting for number one. Like, I'm still waiting for my COVID-19 update before I can take the COVID-20 vax or COVID-21 vax. I mean, to me, it's a nightmare in a way, but I don't think it's even possible. I don't think it's even possible that they could actually deliver all this stuff. I just think it's a ridiculous predicament that we're in. There are so many other things that are demonstrably worse for us, that they're completely behind. But I think we all know what's really going on. I think ultimately you could just look at the radical environmentalists and the eco-fascist utopias that they have designed, and that's the real purpose here. COVID's a cover, and I think everybody knows. This Great Reset thing. Like the Great Reset, that was on the cover of Time magazine. I've seen it pretty much everywhere, but it's also been called a conspiracy. So they say you're a conspiracy theorist for your talk about this supposed Great Reset coming, and then we find them, the technocrats, in their own words, talking about this being a reset. The governor here talked about this being a reset. Listen to this, 1984, George Orwell, quote, everything other than working was forbidden, walking in the streets, having fun, singing, dancing, getting together, everything was forbidden. So, again, COVID 1984, such an apt description for this. Okay, so a few other things. Okay, here we go. We already talked about Governor Newsom, and we all know that's I don't know if it's on purpose or not, the hypocrisy. It may be. Maybe they're just that tone deaf. But here's this little thing about Keanu Reeves. So he had told his characters to come. He had told his party attendees to show up as extras, is what happened. And it turned into a party. That's what happened. Virgin Hyperloop completes its first test with actual passengers. Isn't this so peculiar that the big names in space travel are focusing on subterranean travel? I'm starting to think that deep space and all the money we've been putting into getting up into the stars was always a cover for something else. So Virgin Hyperloop envisions building systems that connect cities. They will have pods that seat between 20 and 30 people. See, my contention is this would be used to fake space travel and send people to Mars. And I don't think it's difficult to think to really get people to go along with it. Not at all. I want to show you a picture. If you've seen this, it looks to me like a PPE astronaut. The person is dressed from head to toe. In fact, it looks identical to a SpaceX uniform. The SpaceX suits are slimmer than the ones we saw for Apollo. And this one even has a similar helmet, less of a fishbowl shape. But the people wearing personal protective equipment are looking like space cadets. And I think that's intentional. Commenter says they need to isolate the virus in the first place. Well, they're trying to punish the non-believers in it. You know, we're supposed to believe that that picture that they showed us of the ball, you know, with the little spikes on it. Oh, that's a COVID. They found one. Like, you can just go get your rag. Go get one of the rags that somebody left on the ground. Just wring it out like a rag and the little COVIDs will pop out. Uncool Band says, why wouldn't you close the gap in the neck area? Right. Oh, yeah, here's something, too. For those of you who are compliant and you believe in this, just so you know, if you have a beard, your mask isn't sealed, and that's kind of a problem. So you should shave your beard. Or lather your beard in Vaseline before you put the mask on. Also, you should be putting your masks in red biohazard containers, and you should be calling the EPA and find out about the proper ways to dispose of this sort of waste. I kind of think there's a big opening right there for a new Uber, like Uber PPE or PPE Dash, some company that just picks up the waste and autoclaves it and replaces it with new stuff. Nunya Business says, I'm out of here. Love your work, Tim and crew. Yeah, please come back on Thanksgiving, if not sooner. Thanksgiving, we're going to premiere the first episode, season 1, episode 1 of, I'm not going to say it, we'll just divulge it then. Those of you in Discord know what we're working on. It's actually something we started kind of outlining and tinkering around with a couple years ago, but we put it to work and it will be out on time. I've seen some fake news. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on it, but definitely fake. El Paso nurse describes, quote, the pit, where COVID patients just get left on the ground after 3 rounds of CPR, and they have Texas inmates moving the bodies at the morgue for $2 per hour. Yeah, it sounds like they're just moving dummies around. I think it's fake. But I don't know what to make of this. So this is Bill Gates, and he's talking to Stephen Colbert. And I suppose this is supposed to be comedy. But Bill Gates compares distributing vaccines to the final solution, as in hunting down and killing a specific targeted group. It's a very peculiar thing, and I'm just going to play it.
Just the best solution.
And the final solution,
which is a year to 2 years off, is...
So a final solution. Let me play the whole clip. This was on a, quote, comedy show.
And then the final solution... which is a year to 2 years off, is the vaccine. So we've got to go full speed ahead on all 3 fronts.
Just to head off the conspiracy theorists, maybe we shouldn't call the vaccine the final solution. Maybe just the
Good
best
point.
solution. Okay.
Now, why is that even funny? That's the strangest thing, his cackle here. And it makes me wonder, was this a joke that they wrote for him? Are they playing into the fears of the vaxophobics? And again, this channel's not vaxophobic. In fact, I sent a tweet today to Jack, is it Jack Dorsey? Jack Dorsey. And I was like, yeah, Jack Dorsey, you can have mine, you know, Vax Jack Dorsey. This is a pro-vax Twitter channel, so no need to censor it. But listen to this laugh.
The
Good
best
point.
solution. Okay.
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
So again, that's Bill Gates. Nothing to worry about there. But yeah, he does see in 1 or 2 years, he wants to do a final solution. Got breaking news from a commenter, says a source from inside has relayed to us confidential. Oh, if it's confidential, I'll just say it. A major event is coming within the next 72 hours. Now, how do you define major event? I mean, Hunter's laptop broke the internet for like 2 days, and that was a nothing burger. Commenter says, the final solution quote makes the rounds. COVID believers see the full interview and say it was taken out of context. Disproves conspiracy theories. Well, the thing is this. There is no other context in which the phrase final solution means anything other than murdering a bunch of people in a targeted way. So it is kind of peculiar. Like, let's just say instead of final solution, he said, well, we'll just cremate everybody. Like, you know, you wouldn't let him get a pass. Like, he pretty much said, he death threatened the human race. He did. All right, let us move on. Again, nothing new there. I'm just trying to figure out, well, what is he? Is he a technocrat pitchman trying to sell certain people? Like, here's something that's kind of sinister if you think about it. Okay, look at who he's with. You know, he's with a fellow Hollywood elitist, leftist, Democrat, entertainer, adrenochrome addict type, Stephen Colbert. It could be that Bill Gates and Stephen Colbert are selling the idea to the left that, hey, do you want to exterminate the right? This is how we do it. Like, maybe that's how it's going to end up. Because it just seems like they're so generous when it comes to the vax. They're always against the anti-vaxxers, and they'll never give me mine first. And usually that would be their attitude. Like, why aren't they trying to hoard the vaxes? Being what they are and who they are, why isn't the political left trying to hide the vaccines for themselves? Secure it for themselves first. Why are they so insistent that they give the medicine to the people they hate? And that's kind of why a lot of people suspect that, well, maybe it's not what we are supposed to believe it is. So I'm looking at this Bill Gates comedy sketch and I'm thinking, well, maybe this is a pitch. So maybe there are some people, I don't know. Are there any people out there who are listening to this thinking that, yeah, maybe this would be a good way to solve global warming? Bill Gates has never been photographed wearing a mask. That's true. Assuming he's not wearing one now. People have noted his wife's curious resemblance to not only Kevin Kline, but Robin Williams. Strange people. Okay, I have a commenter here who says, and this was a response. Look, I've been going on Twitter and just pointing out inconsistencies on the ball Earth, because sometimes at night it's just black on the backside. Sometimes it's lit with little, it's like Christmas. Like every continent is lit like a Christmas tree. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, it can't be both. It can't be lit like a Christmas tree, but also pitch black. So which is it? And so I'm communicating with someone who's pretty high up there, astrophotographers, as far as they go. He's up on Twitter. And we're talking back and forth. And I said, well, how come when the ISS goes around the ball, when they go to the dark side, they don't show us, or rather, when they show us the dark side, we see lights. How come it's not dark? You know, and he tried to explain it away, but you can find just as many pictures where it's dark, pitch black, as where it's lit. So anyway, my point is, the photos that were given of the Earth, they're all contradictory. And so I just like to go ahead and go on Twitter sometimes and try to make some progress here. You know, get someone to see that what we're actually dealing with, I think, is visual illiteracy. So anyway, I get this comment from someone who says, you sound so positive. What do you base your belief on? And I think that's where they're wrong. Like, I'm not positing a belief in something that I know something you don't. I'm saying you know something that may not actually be true, or you think you know something that may not be. So what I said was visual literacy is what I base my non-belief on. Not being fooled by sneaky cartoons, science-y imagery dressed up as science. And to me, I'm not even finding it all that debatable when it comes to the globe thing. They just haven't presented us with anything that I think constitutes evidence. And it is kind of laughable, though, the level of cognitive dissonance they have to engage in. Like I brought up earlier, they're saddled with ridiculous stories like a space rock falling through a woman's roof in 1954, bouncing off a radio and hitting her. in the hip where she lies on the couch. And it's 4.5 billion years old. 8 pounds came from space. Or this other guy last week who was not doing too well financially, and a $2 million asteroid came down through his roof. It was still warm. He took it to the bank, and he's 33 years old. Like, I don't believe that story. But if you're a true believer in the system, in the whole paradigm, you're stuck with a lot of nonsense, and it goes deep. We have a 20-year blooper reel of the ISS. The footage from the space shuttles are even worse. In fact, I was looking at the latest SpaceX NASA launch just the other day, and I did find harnesses, and there was a very bizarre little exchange where all of the astronauts started hugging each other, like a big group hug. Looked very, very fake. So I have an image here on the screen, top and bottom. Both images come from the same agencies. One is a depiction of what space looks like, with the 3,000 pieces of space junk, orbiting space junk, which also would include, I believe, Starlink satellites. They're putting 42,000 of those. I mean, there's going to be more orbiting routers than the total number of, well, near-Earth objects orbiting the world here very soon. But then you look at the picture below, where you have a couple astronauts floating beside the space station, and as you look below, there's no space junk, none. So you're supposed to believe you can see Starlink satellites, something the size of a cargo van from a couple hundred miles away, and it's bright like a star because it's reflecting the sun. But we have 20 years of footage of the ball from 250 miles up, and there's not one single shot of space junk. None. It's absurd. And I don't think that one can hold this position of intellectual superiority because they believe these ridiculous cartoons. And that is actually what it is. And so I think what we're actually seeing here is a different form of illiteracy. Because the power disparity there would be between illiterate and literate. I mean, we're talking about a great chasm. And I think that there is a level of visual illiteracy that's been programmed into really 7 billion people. Jason says, why don't they ever show the crew experiencing G-force? Yeah, I did see one piece, I think, on one little clip. It was, I think of these as performance art pieces. So they did a tour of the ISS where a cosmonaut is playing around in the toilet, because that's what they do when they're on these tours. It's like this thing hasn't been washed in 20 years because they don't have running water. Anyway, he has a screw, and you can look this up if they haven't, I guess censored all the videos. They do pull these videos, so you have to be careful, but you can find them on Library and BitChute. Some of these ISS debunks. Well, there's one where a cosmonaut drops a screw on the space station. Well, as you know, if you drop anything, it's supposed to float magically around in front of you. Well, this thing fell to the floor, and you heard the metal hit the floor. You heard it bounce and bounce and bounce. In other words, it had some gravity inside of it or something. That right there was a debunk. Then we heard the director. And this was just a couple weeks ago. On a recent ISS video, we actually heard the director, there shouldn't even be a director in the thing. So, no, they've blown their cover so many times, but I think they're counting on numbers, numerical superiority. More people not in the know. And that's one of the things, too, is that you've got numbers on their side, and you're dealing with people who believe in consensus-based science. Finbar says, why don't they show the docking of a shuttle to the ISS, i.e. the ship that brings the supplies? Well, they do. That's what they're doing, is they're sending up these resupply modules from SpaceX. They're sending supplies up. Tons and tons of science is what they say. Oh, we're sending up some science. We've got 350 pounds of science. It's like, what is it? Test tubes and microscopes? Like, it's always so vague. They're going to put their blood in a centrifuge. They never really talk about what it does. But that's what keeps the ISS up. Why doesn't it fall down? Well, it's because they send up these CGI rockets, and when it goes and docks on the back, that little bit of momentum is what boosts the ISS and keeps it going, so they say. I mean, it's really an elegant and beautiful perpetual motion machine, this heavenly cathedral, this orbiting castle. It's really incredible, but it's also just pure fantasy. All right, let us move on. If you're looking at the screen, I have an image of a couple, well, it's like a married couple, probably in their 90s, and they're covered in plastic bags, they're wearing masks, and they're kissing through a piece of plastic. And again, this is all just the new normal. Really quite sickening if you think about it. They could be crisis actors. Commenter says, do you think Flat Earth was released to discredit the COVID deniers? No, I woun't say so. Because here's the thing, most of the mainstream conspiracy theories don't deny, at first it wasn't denying COVID, it was the 5G stuff, or they were saying it was a bioweapon. I didn't really see overt virus denial itself until recently. I'd like to see more of it. But no, the thing is, the flat earthers have a point. I don't think it's discrediting at all to reassess what it means to say something is a scientific proposition or this is a scientifically founded belief. I think there's a lot of misconceptions that have been deliberately sown as part of the dumbing down process. Take, for example, global warming. People say, I believe in global warming because 97% of scientists do. Well, those 97% of scientists could be similarly corrupted or wrong. It's just a fact. They could be wrong. At one point, it was believed. Well, we can't even say that anymore. They used to think the earth was flat. Now they deny even that. You know who the first flat earther probably was? It was the first scientist and astronomer and astrologer, the first chemist. His name was Thales. You know, the one who predicted the eclipse in 585 BC. And this is an interesting character, this Greek mathematician. One of the seven sages. He believed that the world was flat, or rather that it was an endless disk. Well, rather an endless sea with a disk of land, but that it was endless. And that everything moved in a circuit above. So he wasn't a baller. So this was Thales of Miltius. Now, I did find a couple of things interesting about him that kind of made it seem like this was Nikola Tesla in another life. There are so many parallels. For example, one of the images you'll find of this character, one of the common ones, is he's always holding lightning in his hand. I believe he's credited with having discovered static electricity or something. Could be a made-up character. But if you look at the Wikipedia image, he's carrying lightning bolts. And then I was looking at that and I was comparing it to Tesla, who's holding lightning bolts. And I also found that just as Tesla had a bit of a rivalry with Edison, so too did this sage have a similar rivalry with one of his contemporaries. And he was sort of buried in the same way. So a number of parallels between them, and I also think the name Thales is something of an anagram for Tesla. Okay, I'm going through comments here. How does the crew change clothes before the docking? Yeah, I wish I could call the space station and ask them some questions like, why do you guys wear your belts so tight that your necks bulge? I can see your jugular veins. Like, you don't have gravity tugging at your pants. Like a month ago, I was watching a video where the astronauts were talking to Trump, who was in the Oval Office. The video is from last year, actually. But the astronaut said to Donald, I can hardly believe my life. I'm hanging from the wall and talking to the president. So I'm like, hanging from the wall. It was a dead giveaway. Commenter says, in the fallout, reports from Princeton, conspiracy mongers, the new conspiracists are an attack on democracy. Oh yeah, let me go ahead and get into this topic here. Because Obama said, yeah, he's like, I'm duct taped to a wall, look at me. Man, that was the same astronaut, by the way, who eats the chocolate balls. The chocolate coffee balls. Anyway, Obama came out and he said, misinformation is going to be the death of democracy. Conspiracy theories. And this is another thing that's repeating from late 60s, which is the use of conspiracy theories to discredit the left, to demonize the left. And I've seen a number of articles bringing this up, saying it's a time-tested tactic. They know it works, that the lesser of two evils actually does work. And I've seen all these counter-arguments saying that if Trump wins, it's a testament to the power of misinformation. So Trump's like, I mean, Obama is talking about street organizers having to deal with QAnon theories now. So I'm looking at this through my they live glasses. So when Obama says misinformation will be the death of democracy, I think what I'm actually interpreting here, here's what I'm hearing. What he's actually saying is the truth is going to break the media stranglehold that the oligarchs have, that the mass media has. Because misinformation is really just talking about the news media critically and countering their lies. So here's the setup, though. They're saying that conspiracy theorists today, QAnon in particular, are all really just the same exact group of people who were agitated decades ago against the civil rights. So they're trying to conflate anti-civil rights racists with conspiracy theories. And this is coming out more and more in the news. And that's why I think it's very pertinent that the term they're using is moving away from conspiracy theorist and moving into conspiracist. Because as you know, if you break apart the word, it does look like conspiracist. And of course, this is another important point. It's a dishonest thing to only refer to people on the right as conspiracy theorists when the left wing has all of their conspiracies as well. For one thing, systemic racism. More than 66% of hate crimes that are reported are later found out to be hoaxes. Like Bubba, the race car driver, wasn't lynched with Nike shoelaces. Jussie Smollett wasn't lynched by MAGA hats dumping bleach on his body. Like, this is common. So many fake hate crimes out there. Those are conspiracy theories by the left. There's a conspiracy theory that bowl cuts are running around shooting up schools. It's a conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theory, the sky's falling because of fossil fuels. Another one. So both sides have their conspiracy theories. It's just another way of saying that the other side's argument isn't valid without addressing the argument itself. That's why I don't like the term conspiracist, because I know it's just a smear. Another thing that's also being attacked, and this is why I'm kind of seizing it, is this term, this concept of conspiratainment. So they don't think that you ought to find any of this amusing. They don't think that we should find it entertaining to deconstruct mass-mediated lies, false explanations. We're seeking the truth, ultimately, but we have a methodology. We're critical theorists, and we're just applying it at the promulgators of the major worldview that most people share. And this leads us to question things as fundamental as what the damn moon is, and can we even mine it for diamonds? So the mass media is really trying to shut down conspiratainment, people who find this stuff entertaining, and they don't want it to become a legitimate form of entertainment. It's dangerous. What I'm saying is dangerous. What I'm saying could literally kill the world. If I say something compelling that causes you to not want to trust the guy who's talking about the final solution, you might not put on a face diaper, which causes you to carry the devil virus, and you give it to this person, who gives it to this person, and then the dominoes fall. Everything started with you contracting a mind virus, an unapproved one. And Kim Kardashian, we talked about her a little while ago, she froze her Facebook account because she said there's too many conspiracy theories. So they're trying to acclimate the masses to the idea of quarantine, not just physically, but mentally. Are you mentally quarantined from anybody spreading conspiracy theories? Are you quarantined from people spreading COVID? It's the same program. And now that Thanksgiving is coming up, and this is always a time of the year where they want to attack a few things. I say the mass media does not like the nuclear family. And they're always trying to outgroup the black sheep. Make sure you outgroup the black sheep in your family. You know, the uncle that talks about 9/11, make sure you handle that person and don't let him spread his misinformation. Well, this year it's worse. This year it's going to be, how do you handle that uncle who doesn't wear a mask and thinks COVID is a government communist hoax? You know, this is where they're going with it. And of course, it's all mocking people who might actually know something. So, knowing this was coming, knowing that this Thanksgiving would be attacked in a number of different ways, and it's very subversive what they do, I decided that this is the day we have to point as, or designate for the release of this most politically incorrect bit of cartoon we could. It's a pilot episode. I have to bring this up really quick. We have a pilot episode of a cartoon, and it's about 20 minutes, and it's specifically out there for Thanksgiving because I think that there are so many ideas that the mass media is trying to bury. It would be very inconvenient if a lot of it just kind of, blew up on the 26th. Commenter says, I have 7 siblings. None will talk to me. Well, yeah, because it used to be entertaining, but now it's deadly. Now it's deadly to talk about it. It's like this was something that they were building up to, I think. They started with Alex Jones kind of as a canary in the coal mine. He talked about crisis actors. He got sued. He actually walked it back. Now we're seeing a lot of people being censored on these bigger platforms for expressing these opinions. And I refuse to be censored that easily. Like, I think we all know the truth here. I don't have to repeat it. I don't have to say blank is fake. Like, I think we all know. So we can just not intentionally get shut down. I still don't know what got me taken down on my last channel. We had 2,000 subs. I don't know what it was that I said. It's like a 48-hour long live stream. They didn't say what in there actually caused it. It's so vague. Jason says 85% of people who tested positive for COVID say they wore their masks all the time. Yeah, well, Elon Musk took 4 tests in his house, and I think that's weird. I'm like, so you're in your house, you've got, the richest man in the world. I mean, how many billions does he have? The richest man in the world who has a rocket ship to go to Mars is in his house sticking 6-inch Q-tips up his nose, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times, sticking a Q-tip into his neocortex to see if there's anything there. Like, I find that very implausible. It's strange that he's kind of playing a rebel here. All right, let's see what else we have. I think on open phones, if anybody has any comments, 833-311-1984. Soylent Green is people. Okay, this is another one too. I'm starting to think that there's something fishy going on in Seattle. So we have these riots. We know these riots are real. I know some of you are there. Maybe you can tell me, but I've been looking at some of these people being arrested, these Antifas. And at first I thought that the sheriff's department was playing a joke on us. Like they were just messing around with Photoshop and MS Paint, and they were making these people up. Just a little piece of this, a little bit of that, add some blood. They all look fake to me. They don't look like real people I've ever seen. So if you live in Seattle, let me know. Are these people they are arresting actual residents, or are they making them up? Like, do you remember after 9/11, we had all these pictures of bearded individuals with turbans and Qurans and bomb vests, and they were always ridiculous pictures, like a stereotype, totally unbelievable. I'm starting to wonder if these aren't manufactured. I mean, maybe they're real, but They look like people created on that website, noneofthesepeopleexist.com. And if you haven't been to that site, it's a nightmare fuel. So if you need some nightmare fuel, I would recommend go to thispersondoesnotexist.com. So what do you think? If you believe in space junk, or if somebody believes in space junk, somebody in your family, let's just take it there. Let's say someone in your family believes in COVID. So you could just start with that. You'll say, okay, fine. I'll give you COVID. It's real. I'll wear the mask. Do you believe in space rocks? And they have to say yes, because the same scientists say so. You could ask them, well, how would you be able to refuse if they told you to wear a helmet? Like, would you try to opt out of it? If they said, you have to wear a helmet because space rocks are going to come down and hit us. I would like to see what their arguments are. Like, where do they draw the line? So they can protect you from this invisible thing, but are you going to let them protect you from that thing? Lloyd Miller says, Miles Mathis says that the riots are fake. Well, fake is too general of a term. They're real, of course. I mean, there's nothing fake about it. Are they organic? Are we dealing with stooges? Are we dealing with anything like what the actual marchers think we are? Like, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, everybody who's studied or paid attention to even the Occupy Wall Street movement, it's the same people behind it. But they are actually, they are instigating real activism. There are real participants in this. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to look at how much of it could be staged. I've had callers tell me that there are tent cities where people are being brought in to participate in these riots. Lloyd says the helmets wouldn't help even if real asteroids. Well, they wouldn't help necessarily, but nor does the mask necessarily help. It's really just to show that you care enough about other people to wear a helmet to protect yourself. Because you know what would happen if you were driving or something? Rock hits you. You can't just be going around without a helmet anymore. Or your face covered. And I think we are eventually moving into spacesuits. There's a few signs I've seen. Someone sent me one from a bar in the UK where it's like, don't make eye contact with anyone who's not at your table. I'm like, wait, don't make eye contact. I kind of thought they were going to do this earlier, like opaque sunglasses, because eye contact leads to social distance violations. So no more eye contact. But the asteroid thing is this. The reason for the asteroids and the reason for they want you to believe in them. Like, I don't know what we're supposed to think. One, it's going to kill us all. Or two, it might be worth $2 million, like that last guy. But again, the asteroid thing is, I think the pretext is it's another universal threat. So instead of aliens, instead of climate change or COVID, it's another universal threat, which it's all about collective trauma bonding. They want us to be bonded with everybody on Earth. They want us to be scared of the same thing so we can all be saved together. This is the doomsday cult that we're in. But yes, calling the riots fake is lazy. There's a lot of laziness when it comes to how people analyze the news, I've noticed. So we've had to come up with a separate term here. And I have a book coming out later this month called Conspiratainment. And it's called Conspiratained. But in it, I talk about people who automatically call everything they say fake because they're conspiracy theorists or whatever, or because they don't trust the news. The problem with calling everything fake without investigating it is you're not investigating it. And that's the same exact issue that the people who believe it all without investigating are running into. It's a very passive and indefensible position, and it's malleable. You may as well be an auto-believing, spellbound news junkie who believes everything on TV if you're just going to call it all fake. It's not even directly in the middle. There's a methodology here. There's a logic to it, rather. The only things that you would consider to be fake until proven real are the things that are extraordinary and that are not attended with a burden of proof. And for a lot of people, the idea of rockets going into space is no longer extraordinary because it's been normalized. But I would say that no, a rocket ship going into space to send genetically modified mice to an orbiting space station, I think it's still very extraordinary, as much as they've tried to normalize it. Holy Kokomo says, we will know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. That's William Casey, CIA Director, 1981. Well, they've done better than that. It's not everything that the American public believes is false. It's the world. So it's much, much bigger. Now, when it comes to the riots, now who benefits? Like, do we think that, I don't think that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are paying for these riots or funding it directly, but are they benefiting from it? In a way, yes, that is their base. But they went so far that I think they actually damaged the cause. And so the more I looked at it, the more it seems like Trump would be the main person to benefit from it. So if anybody's paying for the riots, I'm kind of pointing in that direction. Maybe Donald Trump in a George Soros costume. Are they still out there rioting? You know, they kind of lost steam. I think they're happy now. They got their Biden. But wait until this thing, and I see a lot of wishful thinking going around these days, but I'm pretty sure that RGB's death was the signal. So I'm just sort of bracing for that. There's going to be an outraged group of protesters and marchers very soon. Like you thought they were mad before. Like you thought that the left hated Bush. And these are fair weather riots. I think that the winter will put an end to it. And isn't there a new PlayStation? You know, if there's a new PlayStation, it's another universe they can go to. They may as well be going to Mars. That may quiet things down. Bread and circuses. Lilith 2020 says they don't like Biden either. Well, sure, but nobody was voting for Biden. They were voting for Kamala, who's basically, Obama in a wig. Not literally, but I'm talking about policy. But I'm not really even paying attention to it I am, but I'm not really like hooked into it. I'll know what the truth is when you all know. And it's going to come into my inbox in the form of a BetMoose, a Bitcoin payout. So Bitcoin's gone up. The money I put in is probably going up. And if Trump wins, I win a little bit. Not a lot, but it'll cover some of the expenses running this channel for sure. All right, let us move on. Going through my Twitter feed. Okay, this is something I had to bring up. I'm looking at this image of the ball Earth, the globe Earth, right? And the response was trolls got a troll, but I wasn't trolling. I was looking at this picture of the globe, and I just said to myself, that is ugly. Because I've been working on a lot of digital art, and been immersed in art, been on Pinterest, and I'm looking back at the globe, and I'm like, that's not how I would have done it. Like, I think it's quite ugly. It looks like a bad painting. It just looks like a bunch of paint. It doesn't connect with me as land. Like when I look at photography, like for example, if I go up to the crest, I'm 5,000 feet up looking across the land, it looks like Earth. It looks like the place where I live. Now, I look at a photograph of it, it looks like it. But then I see the painting here. And at no point does this strike me as, oh, I live on that. Like, I give this an F. It's probably one of the ugliest paintings I've ever seen. Does anybody here agree with me, or do you think it's beautiful? Whether you think it's flat or round, what do you think about just the quality of the painting? Crap or no? Put a 1 in the chat if you think it's crap. Put a 2 if you think it's high art. Lean Dion says it's the quarantine ball. Lloyd says betting makes you partisan. I would like to see the left hysterical again. You mean hysterical-er? Sure, me too. I mean, who wouldn't? But this is different. See, 2016, hysterical meant they're screaming, they're crying on TV, and they're politically organizing. But hysterical in 2020, I think they're going to go full ISIS. I see 1111. There seems to be a consensus here. 97% of the chat seems to agree that the Ball Earth painting is garbage. Too late to undo it. You know, they can't remake it. Cunify says Earth looks perfectly round. Well, that oblate spheroid, it's actually shaped like a pear. It's chubby in the middle. Ask Neil deGrasse Tyson. That is oblate. So that oblate spheroid right there in front of you is allegedly reflecting the sun, so it's dark on the other side. But that's supposed to be the world where you live. And I'm looking at this thing as objectively as I can, and it just looks so ugly. Okay, let me see if my ringer is on. I believe it wasn't on. Okay, ringer is back on. 311-1984. Again, the number is 833-311-1984. Finbar says, I dislike the Earth pick a lot. Lloyd says, what was the stuff about Rudy's hair dye melting? I saw that. He was sweating. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, ITS, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's going great. How are you right now? As far as this presidential election goes, are you still following it?
Yeah, I think they've got some interesting evidence, but it seems really fake. Like this photo you have up on the screen. I don't know. You know, Rudy Giuliani's a red flag, and yeah, I could see it going a number of different ways.
Well, he was sweating black goo. I don't know what it was, but yeah, there was some black goo coming down his neck. It could be a lot of things. It could be hair dye. It could be a spray on. But the whole thing's shady, but it's shady on all sides.
That it is, absolutely. And it sucks. I hear you say that you got censored again. I think when they rolled out that new, do you remember when YouTube went down for the whole world for like a few hours? I think they were rolling out their new censorship grid. And my theory is that they're targeting different people now, and they're not really looking for content. They're looking for excuses to attack people.
Okay, see, I remember that was the day that I was discussing the bizarre theory that Donald Trump is actually Elvis Presley in a new persona. And we were just kind of jokingly discussing this thing. And the next thing you know, YouTube goes down. And I was like, man, did we uncover the big one? But then it comes back and yeah, you're right. A day later, they wiped my channel out.
Yeah, it sucks. And they always use really vague excuses. And yours are like, really long streams. So it sucks. It sucks that they're coming after people. Hopefully people will move to alternatives and DLive and stuff.
Oh yeah, DLive's the future. I mean, I haven't sweated the loss of a YouTube channel since like this time last year, when it was actually this time last year that you actually personally encouraged myself and others. You said, go to DLive, YouTube's crap now. And so I don't regret it. Here I am on DLive with a couple thousand subscribers, which is more than I could ever get at YouTube again.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're having some success over there. I think you deserve to have a much larger audience, just in the fact that there's people out there that would love to be tuning in, but they don't even know why your videos aren't showing up anymore, because people just like clicking the big buttons on YouTube to navigate around. They don't really understand what's going on the creator side of things and how they're pinging people and taking out channels. But yeah, it's really a shame to see this attack on the free flow of information. And it wasn't too free to begin with.
No, it wasn't. And they got me for hate speech. And this is what bothers me, is that, like, man, I've been taken down for hate speech dozens of times. So I'm starting to think, well, maybe I'm a bigot and I don't know who I hate. And so could they just tell me, who am I offending, so I can adjust, I can be a better person? But they don't tell me. It's so vague.
Yeah. Yeah, the other one they like to use that's really vague is cyberbullying. and harassment. And then they have the hate speech. The other day I got a strike for talking about that clip of Joe Biden whispering, really weird stuff into that girl's ear while he smelled her. And they said it was scams or deceptive practices. And so it's just total nonsense.
Yeah, I know which video you're talking about. So you're reporting on reality, and they're taking that video, they take it down. They don't allow you to post it. But if you were on Biden's side, and this just shows you how partisan these outlets are. And, on that note, there is someone had pointed this out to me. If you look at Joe Biden, he has a strange resemblance, like very close resemblance actually, to the vampire in Bram Stoker's Dracula. And someone said to me, they have this theory that maybe Joe Biden always creeping up on the necks of women is a way to bring up this archetype of the reptoids, the Dracula, and that this is just kind of flaunting it. I don't know. What do you think about that?
That's a great theory. I hadn't heard that, but that is very interesting, and it goes along with the adrenochrome kind of. And the Donald Trump being Elvis theory is also a great one. Did you notice that Trump's hair has gotten like Anderson Cooper white all of a sudden?
I heard that. That's the strangest thing, because I think the golden hair was his trademark, very significant. And yes, his hair color changed. And I'm like, well, what is that? And, this whole thing is so intriguing to me. It's like I was listening to a channel called Jurassic Liars. I'm trying to get him to call in. And he believes that Trump is the Antichrist, or it's going to play out that way. And he was talking about Trump's going to be given a headshot, and then he'll come back to life miraculously. And I thought, okay, that's kind of an interesting prediction, because if you notice, Trump did have an incident happen. 300 days into office, 33 days before the election, he catches COVID. And then 3 days later, he's cured. Well, what is COVID? It's the coronavirus, the crown. So I think that might actually count as a head wound and a miraculous recovery.
That is interesting. And yeah, I've heard that theory from a number of people. It's very interesting. I think they also quote Revelations oftentimes when they bring that up, something about like the 8, I don't even know what the word would be, kings maybe. I'm not too versed in the scripture, but yeah, that's an interesting theory. And remember, there's been some weird times. I think there was one in the press briefing room where they just like scurried him out all of a sudden with no explanation. But and then there was also like a couple times I don't know if a couple, at least one time on the stage when he just had to, when like Secret Service came and just like, took him out really quickly from being in the line of visibility from the crowd. So I don't know, that could all be fake, right? They could just be kind of planting that seed as a possibility in people's minds that, he could be assassinated. But then again, there's a lot of people who really hate him. So, even for me, who is very skeptical about things, it's like, well, maybe if he gets assassinated, it could be legit. But I would definitely auto hoax the heck out of it.
Right. You know what? At this point, pulling off an operation that big, I don't know that they would leave anything to chance. So I would imagine everything would be pre-recorded if they went that route. But there was one, when he was removed from the podium at a White House press briefing, it was because an individual at the gate, like a bowl cut with a gun, they stopped him. Someone else had mailed ricin to him. So there were a couple of attempts. And then, of course, you have all the rhetoric, the effigies, the guillotines. I'm still, I'm really fact-oriented here. And I'm not quite sure where the theater ends and the real begins on everything. But I don't think you can say that there's nothing real. Like when it comes to any of this stuff, we're just looking at the fact that they do most of their maneuvering with psychological warfare. And I think a lot of people who get really immersed in looking into the psychological warfare just seem to kind of lose the thread of what is actually really going on. And that's what I'm trying to hang on to here. That's what I'm trying to maintain a continuity of reality here. And as you can see, it's incredibly puzzling and convoluted how they have these characters who are clearly written decades in advance into the world stage theater. So, Trump is a very perplexing character, and even Snopes couldn't debunk that Baron Trump Adventures book from 1896.
Yeah, well said, all that. And yeah, I think that they do a great job making it seem real. But like you said, it can't all be fake. But I think that the world stage, the world theater is much larger than is perceived. And then we have, like what you were talking about earlier, which is what I wanted to touch on next with you, which is the new gaslighting that's happening, the social engineering, where they're turning our family against us for daring to look into things like we're talking about here, or like 9/11, or any of these topics. And yeah, I think that's that Orwell quote: "He who controls the past controls the present and the future," or something like that. And then there's also I think the people who control language have a huge stranglehold on the population, and that's what we're seeing with this conspiracy theory angle that they keep using. And you brought up the great point that why does the left get to have their conspiracy theories, and they don't seem to realize that the irony or the contradictions that they're making. So yeah, they just get to label whatever they don't like a conspiracy theory, and everyone just nods their heads in their hypnotic trances.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of want to take that back. So I am going to start using the term conspiratainment. And I also want to I want to use the term conspiracy theorist. Like, oh, you're a global warming conspiracy theorist. Do you think it's real? You put the burden on them because that's all they're doing. And they call you a conspiracy theorist and then they walk away from you like they won. And that's what's so annoying about this, is that if they wanted to take the time with any conspiracy theorist, they'd probably find out that the person has reasons for coming to the conclusions they've come to.
Yeah, I just always flash back to the time that they had you on, I forgot the name, Mix Something News, and you just you mopped the floor with the interviewer. And I would just love to see them interview you more on these topics, because you could just, make it plain as day. And I feel like I could explain 9/11 as a conspiracy so much better than they could explain. You brought up some good examples, but I'll just use the the climate change. But you brought up some other good ones, like systemic racism is a conspiracy theory, and the Russian collusion and all these things. Yeah, we have to just turn the table on them. Use that term as a pejorative, and ask for proof, just like they do to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who's going to say that this is a real thing without providing any evidence. Well, Hitchens' razor, Christopher Hitchens coined this. He said and this is again, it's like a take on Occam's razor, which is you get rid of any unnecessary assumptions. Hitchens' razor says any proposition that doesn't have any evidence can be dismissed without any evidence. So if they're going to say, oh, it's systemic racism, and they provide evidence for it, sure. But the more I look into this whole thing, I think that it's mostly just an interpretation, and it's one of these emotionally charged issues where you're not even supposed to be able to comment on it. But it's like, well, look, I can look at 66+% of hate crimes trying to create the illusion of this racism, and it all tends to be fake. More fake than real on all these things. So anyway, yes, systemic racism is a conspiracy theory.
Right. And I'm really looking forward to that book, Conspiratained. What angle are you going to take on that one? Are you basically what you just said there about taking the lexicon back into your grasp, into your control, and not letting them control the language? Or can you give us any insights about what to expect in that book?
Yeah, I'm taking a lot of transcripts and then a lot of just original ideas, but I'm condensing it all into a book where I'm making the case that we ought to defend outrageous ideas, borderline content, speculation, free thinking. In other words, if you don't have free speech, you can't really have a free mind. So we have free speech and slave speech. And I'm really looking at language control as being the main purpose to the COVID-19. The cover over the mouth. I think it's all connected. But yeah, ultimately, I'm making the case for free speech. We need to have the right to be wrong. We need to have the right to have the wrong answers. And because they want you to think that we just memorize the right answers and we're fine. But no, it's like you have to know how you arrived at those. But apparently, people with the methodology might not arrive at the same answers as the state, so they would rather have us not do our own seeking. So I'm just suggesting with conspiratainment that we ought to at least have the right to discuss these things, discuss wrong ideas. Like, what if you just like nothing more than to laugh at flat earthers? Like, shouldn't you be able to talk about flat earth all day if that was your angle? Or if you believed in it, you should be able to. But you see what I mean here? They're trying to restrict the size of the universe of ideas, and I want to defend the outer limits.
Right. Yeah, that sounds fascinating. And yeah, they always talk about how people can't use the R word or call people stupid because they're being ableist. Yet at the same time, they scoff that people could come to the wrong conclusion. And how dare you be wrong? It's like, aren't you just insulting somebody's intelligence and saying they're not allowed to discuss? You're basically barring people from the public discourse because they're too stupid for your standards. It seems entirely unliberal to me. And it seems contradictory to a lot of their other policies. And I like what you were saying there about the right to be wrong. I think that's crucial. And yeah, they've been coming out even against the Great Reset. I don't know if you saw that New York Times piece. It's basically saying it's a conspiracy theory. There's nothing to see there. I'm like, how could you possibly come to that conclusion, New York Times? Honestly, like Trudeau said it. The World Economic Forum has put out like 100 blog articles about it. It's very clearly, a stated objective from these people. So, and also Cuomo and Newsom, all these usual suspects are saying it. So they can just basically shut down any line of thinking, and it's the emperor's new clothes. They say you're incompetent if you espouse a certain idea, or if you support a certain candidate, you should be barred and doxxed, and you shouldn't be allowed to participate in society.
Yeah, you're right about it. And they're totally gaslighting us about the Great Reset, where that Klaus Schwab guy is talking about how the pandemic is allowing us to reset everything. And a couple of things about this Great Reset. My local newspaper says it on the cover. New Mexico's Great Reset. So it's like the conspiracy theorists have been vindicated in every way. That's why I think that as of now, there's no reason to just be arrogantly dismissive. I mean, look at the way these things are rolling out. And if you look at the World Economic Forum's logo, it's got this circle through the words World Economic Forum, and the circle cuts through the
O's. Yeah, taking pictures.
Yep, exactly. It connects the O's, making 666, which 3 6s has everything to do with Apollo, the sun god, and a one world king. So that's why I think that the novel Corona was ultimately about this: a new world order, a new crown, etc.
Yeah, that logo is very creepy. And also the fact that the O is the 15th letter, and 1 + 5 is 6. So that's why like people call Fox News 666 News, because F is the 6th, O is the 15th, X is the 24th. If you reduce those to a single digit, it's 666. Also, one last thing, and then I'll clear the line for everybody. Did you see that Klaus Schwab, who you brought up there, is talking about risk assessment brain scans before allowing travel? And they're also coming out and pretty much saying that that DARPA and the U.S. military are really trying to be able to read signals coming from people's brains and understand how that's going to impact their future behavior, and also planting ideas in people's mind. If people don't believe me, just Google DARPA Brain Initiative and read through some of these programs that they're doing. But yeah, I don't know if you've seen that brain scan thing from this Great Reset guy. I'll put it in the chat if you want to check it out.
Yeah, appreciate the information. I think it's definitely very ominous. You have these individuals who are speaking for us ostensibly, talking about reducing how much we move around, etc. And I think that this idea of them reading our brains, it's kind of like phrenology. It's probably a pseudoscience, but if scientists say it, people will believe it, because most of the orthodox mainstream science tends to be very pseudoscientific. And so they'll go for it, just like they'll probably go for the human stakes.
Although human stakes is an entirely different topic, and that's crazy. But as far as the brain scanning, I just imagine it's a matter of how much data they can pull in from people, and then how many computers they can fire up and run their machine learning algorithms and find patterns. I mean, that's what computers do. Well, when they use them like this, and I do worry that they can just brute force their way to an understanding of our mind and then weaponize that and use it against us. So I am very concerned. I hope you're right. I hope it's just pseudoscience and, Big Brother trying to pretend to be omnipotent. But I'd rather them not be looking into this at all.
I'm looking at what you talked about here. I found an article on Zero Hedge where it does say risk assessment brain scans to cross borders and implantable chips to read people's thoughts. So implantable chips at a time where, one, they're putting Q-tips to our brain-blood barrier, and two, I mean, this is somewhat kind of a little creepy. Then we have this general talking about vaxing everybody in 24 hours or something. So yeah, I could see why this is somewhat ominous. I mean, active implanted microchips to read our thoughts. It's like that's right out of Minority Report. Actually worse than that.
Well, you want to hear something even worse? I put another link in the chat to a DARPA page, and it's talking about all these initiatives that they're doing called BRAIN, BRAIN. I think it's some acronym. I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but there's all these really scary ones. I just want to read this one right here. It says, the RAM program aims to develop and test a wireless, fully implantable neural interface medical device for human clinical use. The device would facilitate the formation of new memories and retrieval of existing ones in individuals. Formation of new memories. Like, that's really creepy. That's like Inception. That's what's that other movie?
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
Sunshine?
Mind with
Yes.
with another Jim Carrey. Yeah, interesting points there.
Oh man, that guy.
This is very much like the Inquisitor. And this is also interesting. We've been talking about how the contact tracers are kind of like a new Inquisition. And here we have them talking about reading thoughts or isolating thoughts and planting thoughts. That's what the Ministry of Love did in Room 101, where it was finding that errant thought that Winston had and extracting it through torture. But here they're using, it's not torture, but I mean, this sounds like the ultimate control where not even the content of your mind is private anymore.
Precisely. And yeah, somebody in the chat, shout out to the chat, by the way. Frank says, fake tech, most tech is smoke and mirrors. I don't know. I guess maybe some of their claims could be fake. And maybe they just, have a broad mission statement that sounds really impressive and they get lots of funding, but, they're falling really short. But I think if people had described to us, 20 years ago, 30 years ago about, what we'd be doing right now on the internet and the screens that light up and real-time transmit of information, that would seem like pseudoscience, at one point in history as well. And then it comes to manifest. And DARPA was behind the internet too. So
yeah, you know what?
I wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah,
but
you've got a couple of points. I'll address this after. I appreciate you calling in. And yeah, you do make some strong points here because when have they ever telegraphed a technology that they didn't introduce later? So I'm not quick to dismiss things.
Yes.
I do know that Psywar is all about the bluff, but we have to, be discerning enough to know when the bluffing is backed by something. So anyway, appreciate the call, Tim Truth.
Thanks, IPS. Have a good one.
Excellent call. Thanks again. Go to Tim Truth's channel on DLive. Now, we do have fake nukes, fake rockets, fake railguns, but a chip in the brain, right. Well, another thing too, and this is just the sad fact of being in a world of sheeple, is that if 95% of the people believe something's real, it's real. I mean, we can laugh, but COVID's, quote, real now. Now, it's not real, but it's real. Now, when it comes to the sheep, one of the things is, if they get triggered, you kind of have to move in their direction a little bit. It's difficult to get over the rails, which is where we kind of are. Posel says, I think you're highly underestimating this death cult. They need to achieve a 95% negativity worldwide for ascension. Right, but how many times has this death cult suggested it was about to do something? Like, oh, now they got the reset button. If they had a reset button, they would have hit it already. If they had a reset button on that level. But, I don't know. Here's the other side of it. They can't have a reset without an agreement to do the reset with a great deal of the population. They're talking about a revolution. So pretty much if you have most people on board with it, That's all you need. You don't need anything implantable, just a bunch of bad ideas and the money and the organization to implement them. But anyway, anything implantable, I think, will probably be the norm in the future. Anything, first will be wearables, but implantables, I think they may go that direction because of COVID. Like, one of the things they've been really doing is attacking property in every way, private property. And now, of course, the contents of your mind, that's something they're aiming for. But if they're trying to get rid of property, it makes sense that they're also trying to get us acclimated to doing everything, well, not owning anything for one thing, renting everything, no ownership. That's part of the reset. They talk about it. You won't own anything. But not carrying keys because it can carry COVID, not carrying cash because it can carry COVID. So you're not carrying physical items. And I think that's getting kind of interesting because it's like, well, it's more sanitary. If items are super spreaders, and are they not? If the COVID can live on the surface of your phone for 28 days, and it can live on money for 28 days, then money's a super spreader, all physical objects. Do you remember during the hype they were saying if somebody sneezes, it can reach somebody else 70 feet away 3 hours later and kill them from COVID? Lloyd Miller says, everybody watch Amazon 2020 series Utopia. Well, I would recommend it in a way, but you could just look out your window. Like, is anybody here still watching The Walking Dead? Or did people just sort of tune out? But no, it might be worth watching because, again, predictive programming is real. You don't need any more evidence than just looking at Netflix and what they telegraphed, what they conveyed over the last few years about what the game plan was. They had us ready for it. Okay, let me continue. So DARPA has announced a brain initiative. I'm more worried about brute force than any sort of nefarious technology that we've never heard of that suddenly surfaces. Like, I remember before the lockdowns, people said they're going to zap us with the cell phone towers. They're going to use mind control rays from 5G to make us do their bidding. It's like, no, it didn't take mind control rays from 5G. It took mind control rays from CNN and Fox. And peer pressure. All right, let's see what else we have here. I'm looking at comments. Oh, also, even though they did shut down one of our channels the other day, we immediately respawned a new one. So if you want that. Here's a bit of history. In 1991, Al Sharpton instigated a 3-day riot in a Hasidic neighborhood, Brooklyn Crown Heights, and a Jewish student was killed. So 1991, Al Sharpton, rabble-rouser, precipitated a death. Like, this thing is a death cult, and I think they give you like real props if you can get people to go hog wild and get them to tear stuff down. Demagoguery. And they really do reward people who get into that. And look here, in Germany, they're using water cannons, and this is messed up. They're using water cannons against COVID lockdown protesters. They won't use water cannons against Antifa. Lloyd Miller says, what have you done today to justify your place in this crowded world? Oh yeah, in that Utopia movie, it's all about the idea that there's no space left. We're running out of space, running out of air. Have you earned the air that you consumed? They want you to feel bad for being a consumer, to feel bad for being alive. That's what recycling is about. Now, somebody says that COVID can be killed with UV light. I've heard it can be killed with mouthwash. I heard one person say that you could just, and this isn't me, I'm not advising this, it was Glowbusters. They said that you inhale the hot air from a blow dryer. Personally, I think that the quickest way to cure it is to just turn off the TV. Has anybody seen the Rockefeller Christmas tree this year? It's getting a lot of criticism because it's like half eaten. Like it's just like, it looks pretty bad. Maybe they have to decorate it a bit and augment it. But they found an owl inside of this tree. And I'm looking at this. This has got to be some type of satanic ritual. I'm not quite sure how, but Christmas tree, owl. Somehow it's supposed to make us happy that they found an owl in it. It's like, what? You tore down his house? You're going to make a shrine out of it. But anyway, I kind of think it's fake. It's got it. I mean, I think the owl's real with the orange sweater, but I think the story's fake, inauthentic. We're a couple days away from the anniversary of JFK Day, so 11:22. Again, keep in mind, 11:22 a.m. is when they allowed Derek Chauvin to leave. So 11:22 is out there on the world stage, and they do literally telegraph everything. Okay, check this out too. So I was doing some background research into Derek Chauvin, because you know his name, it's all fake. Derek is named from a hangman who hanged 3,000. Chauvin, Western chauvinists. I mean, the whole thing's a play. And by the way, I put this into the book, Conspiratained, the metascript, the stuff that cannot be refuted. So, but check this out. This is a police report having to do with something that happened years ago. It says, at 9:13, 33 seconds after telling him to come out of the room, both officers grabbed the child. Chauvin hit the child with his flashlight. 2 seconds later, grabbed the child's throat. The child cried. Anyway, I just find it interesting. Another Derek Chauvin choking somebody. And again, 33 seconds after telling him to come out of the room. You know, make of that what you will. Again, we all know that Derek Chauvin and George Floyd live probably happily together on Epstein Island. It's more likely that than anything else. Also, check this out. Kenosha killer Kyle Rittenhouse bought his AR-15 with a stimulus check. So the story gets a little more interesting. I'm not going to bring it up now, but I did find something. Maybe if any of you want to dig into it. So the Dragon is the best. It's the fun ride, resilience. That's what they're saying. It's a direct quote. The Dragon is the best. It's so fun to ride, resilience. So we have these astronauts who just went up there. And I have one clip where you actually see a harness. The hair being blown up, it's probably CGI. I mean, it's so fake. But check this out. I want to point something out. We have seen this time and again where they will carry iPads or iPhones strapped to their clothes. And when you look at these devices, the black mirrors, they reflect whatever you would see where the cameraman is. So, in other words, the fourth wall. So, this is something that has been observed for the last few years, where people are noticing that the reflections on these devices are not real. As in, that was put in post-production. It's not a real reflection. So that right there is a dead giveaway that you're looking at a few clowns hanging from harnesses. I mean, these people are such clowns. And look, their belts are way tight. You telling me that zero G's tugging at their pants? No way. But anyway, a dead giveaway is the black mirror. And many times people looking in these black mirrors have found masked faces. Not COVID masks, but I'm talking eyes wide shut style masks, which is a very interesting thing to find on the space station, considering that Eyes Wide Shut was directed by Stanley Kubrick, who faked the moon landing. Okay, let's see what else we have. Oh, Holy Kokomo, talking about the tree, says, I was born in New York City. That tree makes no sense. There's never been a tree like that ever. Yeah, I thought it was a real strange looking tree. Vaughn says the black mirror screens in general are like magic. You can stare into it for scrying or divination. Well, look, 007 John D. Court Astrologer was said to use black mirrors for scrying, for communicating with angels. or whatever, angels of the apocalypse, supposedly. That's how they were described. But here's the thing about the ISS in particular, is that the people who've looked into these black surfaces on the space station have noticed that, yeah, these faces, and here's an image, they look like masks from Eyes Wide Shut. And the fact that they're put in there post-production suggests, I don't know what it means. Just kind of, it hints at something, I imagine. Okay, let's go ahead and move past this. So demons on the ISS, we'll get to that later, because one more thing. So not only do you have these Venetian masks on the space station, but the Venetian masks were brought to you by Stanley Kubrick, who released his movie Eyes Wide Shut on the 30th anniversary of Apollo 11. Now, that movie, Eyes Wide Shut, starred Tom Cruise, who lived with Stanley Kubrick for several months. And Tom Cruise is about to go to the space station. So I've been asking, is Tom Cruise going to film part 2 of Eyes Wide Shut up there? You know, I think we've just been given bits. Here's a quote from Nikola Tesla. Antisocial behavior is a trait of intelligence in a world full of nonconformists. So you think about the mask protesters, the refuseniks, and it all makes a bit of sense. I mean, it is maddening when you watch people going into lockstep. You know, people are goose-stepping at this point. 6 feet apart in spacesuits. Do you ever imagine that you'd see people putting on cockroach suits, a carapace with a windshield for your benefit? Like, I'm wearing this exoskeleton that turns me into an insect for you. And then they walk 6 feet apart, and it reminds me of ants marching in a line. And wait until they start moving people into subterranean enclaves, little domed habitats that are sustainable, safe from radiation, safe from space junk, safe. It will be ant people. Okay, someone here has a comment about the blue light going around the screen. Yeah, it's subliminal. Subliminals are being inserted. Possibly, because it's a template. I don't know what's in there. All right, this is Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms, Mask of the Beast. And I think this is plausible. It's more plausible that the devil switched the S for an R than that Jesus was hanged in a tree, like the Mandela effect would say. So I think Mask of the Beast is actually the truth. I think the real Bible, if you are reading it literally, it should say Mask of the Beast. Mark doesn't make sense in any way. Mask makes total sense. And it's kind of also disappointing that people aren't making this correlation. Anyway, Chief Crow has. See you all later.
Faceless cock, another NPC. Uh-oh, I think they made a typo. Just like Tuttle Bottle, but the R is the S. Everyone's gone totally retarded. Auto believers of the television programming. A 33 with a double E, yeah. www.